Welcome back to the Student Hub Live and today's exams and end of module assessment special. This session is all about time management, a topic we love and can always be learning a lot more about. And I'm joined by Susanne Schwesner. Now, Susanne has learnt to manage her time when she was bored of a small German museum, trying to find the funding and enthusiasm of the locals to build a roof over the quarry to build a museum, all of whom she had to persuade to get to volunteer while completing her PhD in just 3 years. And ever since then, she's, Susanne is excellent, actually, and was telling me off for being 30 minutes late, because she's always saying that time is a measurement, and it's not that we don't have time. Sometimes it's that we don't have focus, which I think is absolutely right, Susanne. So welcome to today's session. We've got a packed agenda to get through, typically, but at home, any questions, any tips, please share those in the chat. And also, let us know on our multi-choice widget, how easy is it for you to make a plan? How easy is it for you to stick to your plan? And what does quality time mean to you? So have a think about 1 or up to 3 words about quality time and what that means. And also whether or not you have an exam or EMA looming. Right, Susanne, time is a unit.
Yes. I mean, you are surrounded by these wonderful globes,
yes.
And if you think of this globe, the first unit of time, we're always astronomical, so if you turn this once, that just represents the day. And the moon has its phases, and that's how the months are made, and then we have the orbit around the sun, and so that's the unit of time. Of course, nowadays, we measure this more precisely. We have the cesium atom, and that has to swing just over 9 billion times, and that's a second. And what we make of that second, while this poor cesium atom has to swing 9 billion times, that's up to us. That's how we organize our time, how we put these many seconds together into chunks that we do something with. And that's what, to me, is time management.
I am so sorry we're 30 seconds late. Susanne is from Planetary Sciences, by the way. And is always doing missions and things, so often we, yeah. Okay, so basically what you're saying is that it's the same measurement for everybody, for everything. Yeah. It's non-variable.
Yeah.
But it means different things to different people.
It means different things, and I think what we quite often don't think about is when we say, I don't have time. Yeah. What does this mean? Yeah. It just means something else is more important. Yeah. And of course, if you are preparing for an exam and you tell your friend, oh, sorry, I don't have time for cake this afternoon, that means you prioritize your exam over your friend. Yeah. But at another time, you might prioritize your friend over studying because it's their birthday and they really want to celebrate with you. So
or the cake.
Or the cake, yes, of course. Cake is always important, isn't it?
Yes.
And so it is about making sure you set the right priorities to do what you actually want to do and not just have time go by and then think, oh, can I get that hour back? Because you won't ever.
But this is hard because I think everyone wants to prioritise for their EMA or their exam.
Yeah.
Right? That's fine. But then you sit there and think, oh, I've got 2 hours. And it's stressful, it's really stressful, you know, sitting there thinking I've got this time to do stuff with, and you end up sitting there and reorganising the paper clips and this, that and the other. How do you make the most of that time then that you've got?
I mean, if you say I've got 2 hours, that's too big a chunk to think of it as one. So you have to plan. You have to manage your time. For those who have seen the EMA writing, you need also to plan your time. So you look at this, there's no way in hell that you would ever do something continuously for 2 hours. Yeah. So break it down in 2, put a little break in the middle where you make tea. Yeah. Okay, 55 minutes, you can do that, right? Yeah, yeah. And now break it down even further. Say you read a chapter, then you answer some questions to that chapter. Or if you write, then you read what you've just written, and you break it down in 20-minute chunks, and it becomes much more manageable and less scary.
But like writing an essay, this planning thing can sometimes feel like a waste of time if you sit down and think, how am I going to carve this up? Because that's coming out of your 2 hours, isn't it? So while you're planning, you're saying, OK, I'm going to think about reading this, writing this, doing this. All of that's taking up time and focus. But I do agree, because I often find it easier to have planned my stuff before I write it. And what you're saying is it's a similar sort of thing. Plan your revision time or your study time before you do it.
And it's also important to plan your revision time, because if you have these 2 hours and you only have these 2 hours, but you've got 3 topics, and you get hung up on the first topic and you use all your time on just this first topic, then you will not have studied the other 2. And so it would have been better had you divided up these 2 hours into 3 chunks with a little break in between, and you would actually have studied all 3 topics in that 2 hours. So planning is also essential to cover what you really want to cover. Remember, it's what we make out of that time.
Yes.
These 2 hours will go by.
And it's very reminiscent because I'm looking at some of these like past exam papers. You have 3 hours, there are 3 parts. You know, we recommend you spend your time equally on it. It's very reminiscent of the whole actual exam process, isn't it? Yes. But that can be hard for students to sort of get their heads around. And I think it's a great idea to sort of start chunking things down. How do they then focus on what matters, what's going to come up on these papers?
Well, one thing is your motivation. The motivation is you want the exam, but you also want to know what you study for the exam for later in life. Yeah. So there's the motivation. Yeah. But there also is this thinking about the exam itself. You want to have a good grade, and so you need to clear the space. You need to make sure you are as uninterrupted as possible and use your time wisely. You also should make sure that you had a good night's sleep if possible, that you are not too full, haven't eaten too much, that you are not very hungry, because all of this will impact on your focus.
Now, you can, if you're clever, get things like a specimen exam paper on module websites. So for those of you who might have an exam, you might be able to look and see something rather like this here, a specimen exam paper, and that will give you the sort of similar sort of layout and look to what you might expect to get in an exam. Or you can even get past papers, which you can get from the USA shop, and you can go and download these off the USA website to take a look at. And ultimately, seeing some of those and seeing what might be in there can be really helpful in prioritising and making a strategy.
Yeah, yeah. Because sometimes you might see that there are optional questions. You might see that in your exam papers, and your tutors will know that as well, that you might have 5 questions but only need to answer 4. Yeah. So you can, if you're really short in time, maybe just revise 4 of the 5 topics. That's of course a bit tricky, and you are banking on that you actually can answer the other questions to those 4 topics that you have revised. But if you're really short in time, this would be one thing that planning can help you with.
So once you figure out then the parameters of what they're going to examine you on, which they always tell you, don't they? Yeah. Well, you might have some short questions, you might have some essays and various things, and they might say we're going to cover this block, and this block. You can then start working out your time planner to be able to think about what you're going to do and when. So you might say, well, with these 2 hours, I'm just going to focus on block 1, or I'm just going to focus on short questions.
Yes, and you can either divide it up by strategy going along an exam paper, or you can divide it up by the topics in your module, depending on what your personal preferences are. But one thing you really should do is practice the exam, because timing in an exam is also incredibly important. I am marking exams, and I very frequently see that people have spent a lot of time on the first question. There is way more there than I could ever give marks, and they get full marks on that, but they didn't complete the exam, and so they are losing a lot of marks. Had they divided their time more equally, they would probably have written a really, really good exam, judging on what they could do for the first question.
And of course, it's easier to pass something on all the questions than it is to excel on one and leave out another and therefore get a 0. HJ and Michelle, I hear there's some great sharing and tips in the chat.
Yeah, we're sharing a few of our favourite TED Talks on procrastination, so we're going to watch those instead of doing our studying, of course. But Sarah in the chat as well said, university has actually taught me procrastination, which I think it's a skill you get better with over time with your study.
I am very good at procrastination. I think one of the TED Talks says, oh, I'm just checking the fridge to see what's in there that wasn't 10 minutes ago.
Or when it's TMA time, my shed becomes very clean and tidy. It always needs organisation around that time. Yeah. It just coincides so well. But we're thinking about making plans as well, which I find making a plan is so easy. It's just sticking to it as another question. And Carla loves planning as well, and she gets a bit carried away with it. I'm sure she sounds very organised though. She likes to get to things early and plan ahead of time, which is, I think it's a key thing for success, isn't it?
She doesn't like rushing. which I think is a good thing to think about and plan ahead so that you don't have that stress if you can. But I was taught many years ago, a plan is a life jacket, not a straight jacket.
Yeah.
And I think if you help that, then you don't beat yourself up so much if things don't go to plan.
So, Michelle, have you picked anything up that you're going to do to help you?
Well, I really love the concept of thinking about the globe and thinking about a unit of time. I think that is really, really helpful. And I think too, if you say, I don't have time, well, we do have time. And I think that's absolutely right. And what we choose to do with it. So instead of watching telly, use that time differently at EMA time.
Yeah. Suzanne, we're on a live broadcast. Suzanne. We're on a live broadcast. You can't be reading your book now.
But I don't want to talk about procrastination. It's difficult.
Procrastination is not a difficult topic. Why? Do you think it's too hard then?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, this
Are
is
you
much
a
more
time
interesting.
management only person then? No, because
Yeah,
you
probably.
can't come in here and just say we're only doing time management, because half the problem with time management is keeping to it.
Is it?
Well, I think so.
Well, you're probably right. I mean, talking about procrastination is hard, so I don't want to do it, right?
Yeah, but it's an issue for our students, so I think we should. How do you stop procrastinating then? Apart from me telling you to put your book on astrobiology down, which is a very good thing.
Well, the first thing is you start, like what we just did. We start to talk about it, and the moment you get a start on something, you might find that it isn't that hard at all.
Yeah.
So wherever you start will be a good thing, because any start is a good thing.
Yes.
About procrastination, it's probably the hardest thing in time management to overcome.
Yes. Because sometimes I'm sitting there and all of a sudden I end up on the Wiggle website looking at cycling clothes, and then I'm like, oh no, I've got to stop doing that and can keep doing what I'm doing. But it's really hard because you can just get sidetracked so easily.
Yeah, and I think one of the most important things is to be aware that that happens and to set aside some time for what you actually want to do. Check the social media or go and buy some clothes. So you have to basically plan the time for that as well. So you can tell yourself, I'm doing this in 20 minutes when I have done the unit and that I wanted to do for study.
Okay. Well, we asked people at home, no reading your book while I do this. We asked people at home, how easy is it for you to make a plan? Let's see what you said. Right. Okay. Very easy to make a plan. Some people are saying it's hard. It can be really hard, but nobody's saying it's very hard, so that's good. All right, in a minute, and if you haven't voted on this, you can do so now, how easy is it for you to stick to your plan as well? So we're going to take a look at that in just a second. What do you think people will say?
It's very hard. And it's naturally very hard, especially if you have something to do that you are not comfortable with, that you are not confident about. And revising is something no one is ever confident about, because then somewhere in us, this sounds a bit like danger, it sounds unpleasant, I don't really know how to do this. And you have to overcome that barrier. And that's hard for everyone.
No, it is.
But the moment you are aware of what is happening and that this is natural and we are all in the same boat, it might become easier because you don't feel guilty anymore. Yeah. The thing about procrastination is you then feel guilty that you haven't done what you wanted to do, and it just keeps building up.
Yes.
And so you need to trick yourself into a start.
Yes.
And once you've managed that, you might roll from there, and you might actually find something that's interesting and that draws you in.
And as Michelle said before, they're a life jacket, not a straight jacket, so they're there to keep you afloat. Well, let's see what you said about how easy it is to stick to your plans. Okay, very hard. Okay, 30% with very hard, 60% saying hard, 10% saying easy. So this is a challenge. I'll tell you what my challenge often is that I'll end up doing something. I'll write my plan, and then I'll do something, and then I'll look back at my plan. I've got nothing to tick off, and I somehow have ended up doing other things that have seemed really, really important. So I'll have focused, and I'll have got my plan, but then all of a sudden, I'll think, I'll read that chapter. That will take me 30 minutes, and it doesn't take me 30 minutes. So sometimes I find it's about, being more realistic about what I can do in certain chunks of time.
Yes, and being realistic is also a question of experience. So when you start with a new topic, take the first couple of weeks and actually take notes on how long did you spend on something. In our geology module, in our first TMA, we ask students, how much time did you spend on this? How much time did you spend on that in the TMA?
Yeah.
So they are basically aware of how much time does it take them
Yes.
to do a certain thing. And that will give you, the more often you do this, that will give you a feeling of how long will it take you to read that chapter, which then can feed in your planning, and you don't end up reading just one chapter where you thought you could read 3.
And of course, the thing is that within these units of time, we can't just think, well, there are 24 hours in a day, I'm going to study for those waking hours, so 18 hours a day or whatever I'm going to study, because that's not realistic. There's this question of balance, but there's also this question of some things mattering, like that planning. That's not a wasted 20 minutes when you've planned a session out so that you can then really focus on it. So how do you suggest students go about that work-life balance and that sort of planning in terms of being realistic then about the tasks that they can do?
Well, I personally don't think of a work-life balance when I do things like this. I think about a pleasant and unpleasant, or good and bad balance, because when you are revising hard and when you're really focused on one thing, you have to have times that you just enjoy. So if you enjoy to be on social media, if you enjoy to go to friends and eat some cake or something, plan that into your studies so you have time where you properly relax, where you properly come off, and don't try to pay the bills and all of that in that time, because you will then get into a perpetual stress and everything has to be done. You need to have time off, and you need to plan for sleep, for eating, because healthy eating and proper sleep is just as important for success in an exam as is the actual revision.
Okay, excellent. Now, what about distractions and things? Because sometimes you can be at home and then the doorbell will ring, or I can just sit down trying to do something and end up having done many other things that I didn't mean to. And some of them, like the doorbell, that can knock my train of thought, take me up and down the stairs several times and lose 10 minutes.
Right, so first of all, maybe you can get yourself to the library. There are no doorbells in the library.
No, that's true.
And if you can, find a space that minimizes these distractions. Yeah. But if you cannot, on the other hand, think about them. What are they? If your neighbors have a really barky dog or a young child or something, you can't do anything about that. And try to just tell yourself, it's there, it's not in my space, it's at the neighbor's house, and try to just push it away. I know how hard this is, and there will be days you manage, and there will be days you don't manage. Some people put on music or something, but you need to find a place and a time and a mindset that allows you to focus. Because let's be honest, the worst distractions come from within us and not from the outside world.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Michelle, you've got some great ways of getting that mindset sorted.
Oh, sorry, actually, I was a little bit distracted because we've been talking about health issues online and the difference between having a health issue that interrupts your study and your plan as opposed to just procrastinating, because they are different things.
Very.
So I don't know what Suzanne's take might be on some tips for students who are having health issues.
I mean, one of the things you often say is building an additional time for things, isn't it?
Yes.
Always telling me that.
Of course I do.
Yeah.
No, there are, if the health issues are the cold that we all get in the fall, then I would say you should have built that in. Like when you make a plan, you should build in 10 to 20% of time so that if you get a cold and really can't study for 2 or 3 days, you know I've got a bit of contingency time. If the health issues are more serious, and of course these might happen, there are several ways of dealing with them. One is if a health issue comes up suddenly and you really can't study or sit an exam, then please speak to your tutor and they will advise you to, and student support can advise on what to do, because there are moments where you just can't pick it up anymore. But then the OU will help to get out of that situation and still do finish your module with everything you need to finish. If you have a reoccurring health issue, if you feel you get distracted by that, which I can very well see, then one of the things is to try to plan it in, to not try to take 2 courses at a time, and to speak to your tutor and maybe also the module team. What is really important? Where do I prioritize? Especially if you can't study at full speed with all your energy. And the same is for if you are a carer or have any other responsibilities that in time management top whatever studying might mean to you, because they are genuinely more important. Then try to prioritize and speak to the module team. They will know how to advise.
Absolutely. And in our session later today, we're going to be meeting with some of the colleagues from the student support team. And if something all of a sudden affects your performance, there are forms that you can fill in, special circumstances forms, and we really recommend that you do that if something interferes. But again, this is in the context of planning. That's been really, really useful. Well, thank you, Suzanne. I'm going to finish on time, or you'll tell me off and send me loads more information. That's been really, really useful. And I particularly like this whole idea about really focusing on that time and chunking it up, and also thinking about strategically what you're going to need to learn, because it's not everything, is it? If you can focus on that and feel like you're winning and feel like you're getting ahead, then that's going to only enable you, isn't it? Brilliant. Well, all the best, and we'll see you very soon. Thank you very much. We'll be having a quick break now where we're going to show you another area of the campus, the language panel, and then we'll be back with a box of chocolates. See you soon.